On today's episode of The Intangibles, we'll be kicking things off as always with the play of the game. At 6 minutes, we'll answer the frequently asked question, what determines when a stun interrupts an ultimate ability in Overwatch? And finally, at 21 minutes and 42 seconds, we'll break down the Countdown Cup Grand Finals. Hello and welcome to The Intangibles. I am one of your co-hosts, Kenny.
And I'm also one of your co-hosts, Matt.
I was listening back to a previous episode where you said, I am your host, Matt, and I remember getting upset about that, so I didn't...
So you made a specific point to say one of your co-hosts?
Yes, we're created equal and opposite in a way.
I don't know about that.
Let's get into things, though, because I feel like we've got a lot to talk about between our two big topics, but let's get started with the play of the game.
Poke chat, poke chat.
And I'm going to give you the honor of going first on play of the game this week. And
all right.
Don't get too excited about mine. It's not that good.
Ooh, so I was going to say the same. Mine's going to be funny, I hope, and not particularly deserving of the award of play of the game, but I think you'll giggle at it. So I'm sitting here at my computer, my gaming PC, and I've looked at this a lot and thought about how kind of ridiculous it is, but how it does add some wonderful value to my experience here. So I'm giving the play of the game this week to RGB lighting on my gaming PC. I know, ridiculous, but I'm sitting here watching my keyboard glow in a rainbow pattern. My mouse is synced up to it. You know, they're glowing at the same color at the same pace. I've seen over at my father-in-law's house, he's got a nice gaming PC that we use Microsoft Flight Simulator on. He's got a whole, setup inside the case and everything with glowing shit going on. Utterly useless, adds nothing of value to like the actual experience that you're having. But it's beautiful and it's fun and I enjoy it. So I'm giving the play of the game to RGB colors and gaming equipment.
That's fair enough. That's certainly intangible. Although that one I feel like we'll let the listeners be the judge, of course, as always. But that one feels like normally we go for it's intangible. You helped in some way. Do you feel like it helps at all? Or is it just completely aesthetic?
It's aesthetic. I can sit here and lie to you and tell you I think it helps my mental and it puts me in a better spot when I play games. I don't pay attention to it when I'm playing games when it comes right down to it. So, no, not really.
We'll see what people think about that. Mine might be disqualified for the other reason that it's too tangible. But I moved recently, as you well know, and for this move, for the first time in my life, I hired people to load a truck for me. In my previous place, I was on the second floor up a narrow turning staircase, and I remember moving in. You helped me out with that, and it was a gigantic pain in the ass. And this time I had some more friends coming to help me move the stuff, but I wasn't about to make them drive to help me and then force them at the end of the drive to carry things down this twisting staircase. So for the first time, I hired people to do it for me, and I was very grateful. I was listening to a different podcast, actually, where coincidentally somebody had just moved, and they were talking about how they had hired movers for the first time. And they were saying, they didn't know what to do while the movers were doing stuff. They were like wanting to what can I do to help? And they're like, the movers were like, just let us do our thing. So I was blessed with that wisdom. I was just like, guys, I'm going to be over here in the kitchen. I had a little area set up with a book and my laptop and like a little place to hang out. It's like, everything else must go. I'm just going to get out of your way. And they're like, cool. But definitely play the game to the concept of getting movers, and I would encourage everyone who can to get movers to help you out, because moving sucks and taking one thing off of your plate is great.
Yeah, whether that's tangible or not, I would still award this the play of the game, because Veronica and I also hired movers the last time we moved, and
for the first time.
And we've moved like 3 different times now, and every time you move to a new place, it's a little bigger, you accumulate some more stuff. And so hiring just big dudes to brute force stuff from one place to the other was well worth the money. Yeah, it's like, you get to the end of the day when all your stuff's finally in the new place. And if you moved it yourself, you're fucking exhausted and you don't want to do anything. But you have to do stuff or you're not going to be able to like function in your new place. When somebody else moves it for you and loads it up and you're doing, whatever percentage of the work, you got energy to do stuff. You can actually unpack a little bit and, it just feels better.
And you still have the energy to be excited about unpacking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I like that.
Sure.
I approve of this message.
Would encourage. Okay, so again, we'll leave that up to the listeners to decide who gets play of the game on that one. All right, as I said, got a lot to get to. Let's go to the frequently asked question. This one, you originally called to my attention, but I'll go ahead and introduce it. This actually comes from a subreddit, r/Overwatch University, and Reddit user CYPPP asked this question, and I'll just go ahead and read verbatim. It's a question about stuns and ults. They say, "This might be a dumb question, but I can't find any info on it. Why are some ults able to still be used after the hero is stunned and some aren't? For example, if a Brigitte shield bashes and stuns an ulting Reaper, his Blossom, his ultimate, stops and it's done. But if a Brigitte stuns a Genji during a Blade, the Genji has the ability to continue his ult. Is there a reason for this?" So the overarching question, what's the deal with stuns being able to or not being able to interrupt ultimate abilities?
Yeah, and I thought this was an interesting one. I sent it to you because you and I have definitely sat on our couches and played Overwatch and got interrupted during an ult and said, what the hell? Like, why does that work here? When in turn, when I was playing X character, I, didn't stun somebody out of an ultimate. So it was a learning experience for me when I saw this question, and there was a couple of users on Reddit who put some very nice, pretty clear answers that kind of cleared it up for me. So I thought it would be nice to share that with our community, if that might be of help to them.
Yeah, totally. Do you want to read one of those answers?
Yeah, definitely. So this is from user Disturbed Waffles 2019. And what they have written out here, I'm just going to read it verbatim again because I think it's very good. There are 4 different ultimate types: cast time, channeled, transformation, and build. Cast time ults, such as Earth Shatter, Pulse Bomb, Dragon Strike, have a short time window, so a short cast time, before their effect takes place, during which they can be stunned and cancelled. Channeled ults, such as Coalescence, Deadeye, Death Blossom, are constantly in use, meaning that no other ability can be used and movement might be restricted for that character. They're generally very powerful, which is why they can be interrupted by stuns. Now, transformation ults, which are the ones that really can't be stunned out of, such as Dragon Blade, Tack Visor, Primal Rage, etc., change how a character works in one way or another while still allowing use of some weapons' abilities in their duration. They can't be cancelled by stuns, since they often require more player input and skill to be more effective. And then build ults are kind of their own thing. Photon Barrier, Amplification Matrix, they're things that are constructed. They require the player to choose a location and create it. They can only be cancelled by Sombra's EMP. So, very, very clear. Goes through a good number of the ults, not every single one. And there's actually a question that follows this directly, like, what about Diva Bomb? Like, I think it's a cast ult, but you can't really cancel it. And I think that's true. Diva Bomb kind of maybe falls outside of that. I'm not really sure. But for the most part, if you look at those ults and then compare them to those 4 categories, that will give you the answer as to how it interacts with stuns.
And there are also some cast ults where the cast time is so short, so narrow, that they're basically non-interruptible. Like Hamster's Minefield, technically there is a window where you can stun him out of using it, but it's microscopic, the window that you have.
Yep. I would even put, like, EMP in there, kind of. Like, I've seen EMP canceled in Overwatch League, but in, like, an actual game that we play, it's quick enough that, yes, it's a cast, but usually that's going to get off.
Yep. I saw a similar answer to that same thread from user Matchstick McGee. very similar rundown of things. They say Blade is part of a group of ults called Transformation, which alter the hero's abilities and aren't canceled by stuns. And that seems to be the big thing. If it fundamentally changes how your champ works, you don't have access to your abilities while you're doing it, you can't be stunned out of it.
Yep, yeah. And those are the ones that are the frustrating ones, right? Where it's like,
yes.
oh, I just threw my flashbang at you, or I just brig bashed you, and you immediately killed me right afterwards.
Yep.
And this is really good info to know when you're playing, because, maybe when you're playing as Brig or McCree and a Genji comes at you, you realize that stunning them is not necessarily the best option that you have. Maybe supporting your team in some other way is the best way to try to help get through that ultimate.
It could be good if you have good coordination with your team, because then you can stun them, and in that window where they're stunned, focus them and kill them, and that can be good. But in the dungeon depths that we play in, maybe that's not the best idea. You just used your stun and maybe got nothing out of it.
Right.
I am interested, maybe talking about this a bit more, because I appreciate the answers that these people provided, and it is useful, and it shows that there's at least some semblance of consistency among these different ult types and what can be interrupted and what can't. But I still have to ask the question at the end of the day, why do it like this? To me, the question should not be based on like whether it's transformed or channeled or cast or whatever. It should be a question of how powerful is the ult and how much do you have to commit to use the ult. So, for example, to me, it makes complete sense that you can interrupt Moira's ult. So it's this big, powerful ult, and she can use it from a million miles away, and it's big and game-changing. And if you can stun her, I think you should be rewarded, because that means she mispositioned or you did something really good, like got a across-the-field sleep dart on her or something. And that should put her down, I think. And it also makes sense to me that someone like Winston doesn't get CC'd out of his ult, because he has to go in completely to make it work. But then there's lots of stuff that I don't understand as much, why it's so easy to CC people out of it or not.
I think that's a good way to... That from like a game development standpoint, that's a better way to look at it, right? Like, your Winston example, I think, is a really, really good one, where the entire use of that ult means you have to be melee in their face dealing with people. So a stun should still stun you, but if it just completely canceled it and turned you back into... basic Winston, you are fucked. You are dead. The ult is worthless.
Right.
So I think approaching it from a more interaction and intent standpoint is a better way to develop those ults and how they interact with other move sets in the game.
Yeah, like, so for example, like a transform one that doesn't make much sense to me is, I guess a few of them, like Mercy's ult, 76's ult. These are very powerful, and like Mercy especially is not easy to target while she's ulting. She's not easy to actually stun, and so the fact that you can do it and then she just flies away sucks. Genji is kind of the same. He's so like mobile while he's ulting that it's just frustrating when you finally manage to CC him and it doesn't stop him.
And that makes me think of another kind of interesting thing, in that in addition to stuns in the game, you have Sleep Dart, right? Which is an entirely different effect.
True.
And doesn't completely negate those transformation ults, but it's the best, like the closest thing to it, right? If you are able to sleep a Genji who's blading, a good chunk of his ultimate is wasted, assuming your team doesn't wake him up. Which, in bronze, gold, silver, like, yeah, he's going to get woken up and he's still going to fuck you up. But the way that's supposed to work is that, yes, it negates a good chunk of that ult.
Right.
Valkyrie, kind of the same thing. If you sleep a Mercy, in theory, in theory, your team gangs up on her and destroys her, and she's out of the fight. So there are different interactions that exist other than stuns that do kind of make a big difference on those ults. Well, and when I say interactions, I guess really there's like the one when it comes down to it. Like sleep is the only one I can think of off the top of my head that really negates those transformation ults.
Well, you also got hacks also interact differently with different ults as well.
Yeah.
Like what happens when you hack a Genji who's ulting? Does it do anything? They just can't use their abilities? Just
he
normally?
Can't. I don't think he can. Yeah, I think all he can do is use his shurikens. I think. That's actually a really good question. We should experiment with this after this episode and see how it does. Because I'm not 100% sure. I believe he still does get hacked, and he can't... Well, maybe it's not shurikens, it's just his sword. So he can't do his dash anymore, which is really the only other move. That's part of it.
So presumably if you hack him while he's ulting, he can't use those abilities, but then after the hack wears off, he is still ulting, if he still has time left over.
What happens if you hack an ulting Soldier 76? Does he still have auto lock?
I would like to think no. I really would. But I think this is another thing to add on to this conversation, and this person was confused about how stuns and ults interact, but there are these other CC types, and they all work a little bit differently as far as what ults they stop, how they stop them.
So just for fun, I googled this, and this is from a few years ago now, but I imagine it still applies. Sombra's ult does not cancel Soldier's actual tack visor portion. He can't sprint during it, so he can't use his other abilities, but the auto lock is still in effect.
So he can't use his rockets, he can't do that stuff.
Right. So, which is weird. It is an interesting way to do it. It feels like a hack should negate that actual additional ability, right?
It feels especially bad because, you as Symmetra, you put up your big wall as your ult. Sombra EMPs and your ult just disappears instantly. That sucks.
It's an opportunity, I think, for the devs to do additional balance. And I'm not, I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about this, and I guess it just may not happen enough that it's not a huge consideration in their balance. But I think there is some tweaking there that could be good.
Definitely. I don't think that they should be deciding how stuns and how CC interacts with ults based on, you just happen to be a transform ult, so therefore... Because you can imagine a ranged champion having some kind of transform. Well, 76 falls in that category, where it's why shouldn't that be interruptible? He should be in the distance auto-locking. He should be positioning intelligently like Moira has to. Why is it that he can't be interrupted when he uses his ult?
That's especially funny because now they took away his damage fall off too, so it's easier for him to set up back.
Right.
And be safe and not have to worry about that. So it's you almost want to have that interaction there so that they're encouraged to, yeah.
And I'm not saying that 76 is broken or anything. I just think that it's strange.
Yeah, the answers that we read are good and informative, but it still is a frustrating experience, I guess. And there's not a good, clear, concise method to the madness behind everything.
No. I'm curious if you had any notes about recommendations. I gave 2 recommendations. I said, I'm sorry to say it, but I don't think there's an easy route other than lots of experience. But I would recommend just using the mnemonic that when a hero changes form, they can't be interrupted by a stun. And a big piece of advice that applies to more than just this question, play the other champs, even the ones that you don't main, at least a few times. And this will quickly reveal to you how they can be exploited, how can they be attacked, and which ults can be interrupted.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, playing the other champs that you're talking about, ults that can be negated and whatnot, play those champs who have the toolkits to negate things. Play Ana, play Sombra a little bit. Understand how they do interact with people so that you can be on the lookout for those specific champs cooldowns when you're playing. I think that's important in general, yeah, right? The more you play the other champs you play against and understand their kits, the more you're going to be conscious of that when you're in the game playing against them.
Yeah. And nothing, this is a little bit of a tangent, nothing will reveal to you how to counter a champ that pisses you off than playing that champ and seeing what shuts you down.
Getting your ass kicked, yeah. That's how it goes, right? You're getting roasted by somebody, and then you're like, I'm just going to pick up this champ and roast everybody, and you immediately just get fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good learning experience, yeah. You understand that there is some skill involved in those other champs, too, and you're going up against people who know what they're doing.
Yep. Absolutely. As much as I complain about Bastion, and I do, whenever I play him, I don't do very well.
Yeah, I feel like Bastion's a special case where he's one of those champs where when he's supported well, like if you duo as a Bastion with like a support, you can just roll on people for the most part, especially in our ranks.
Yep.
But if you're playing solo and nobody in your team pays attention to you at all, yeah, you can't do a fucking thing.
It's going to be a rough time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got a breakdown coming up after a brief word from our sponsors.
Welcome to Eberron,
a land we fought so desperately for, now a land torn and scarred by war.
Where our paths can never leave us, but we forge a new path.
Where opportunities are everywhere, for those with the guile to take them.
Where we find a new family while hunting down monsters.
This is the Morning Blues, a D&D 5e actual play game released every other Thursday on Beholder to No One. Join our DM Adam as he runs Virik, Jody, Rem and Mika through their bounties and exploration.
Oh, let's break it down! Why are you so angry?
Pizza Hut breadsticks!
I wish. I wish we could get that bread. Now we're breaking down the Countdown Cup, and especially the Countdown Cup Grand Finals, the last of the big tournaments before playoffs and the actual overall Overwatch League Grand Finals.
Yeah, it was, I watched the qualifiers over a long period of time, and then I watched the tournament pretty much in the evenings, like overnight, after it was live, but on YouTube. Like,
yep.
It's a blessing and a curse that we have a 4-week-old, because it's like I'm up at 1 a.m. potentially anyway with her. So it's like, I'll throw this shit on and watch it, which was, again, good and bad all at once. But
it's a treat.
The tournament was, I enjoyed it a lot.
I did too. I watched the qualifiers and the earlier rounds of the actual playoffs very piecemeal and very out of order. I would just be whatever YouTube was recommending that day. I would just pick it up and watch some matches. And I had I think just gameplay wise, I really enjoyed what I was watching.
And just as a reminder, because we talked about this in a previous episode, there's hero bands in the Countdown Cup, and they're the same bands as we talked about then. So Echo and Ashe are both out on the damage side. Sigma is out as a tank, and Lucio is out as support. So they were unavailable for any of the teams to play, and that dictated team comps a little bit.
Yep, for sure. I think there was definitely a lot of Pharah being played in the tournament, and maybe that would have just been a straight-up replacement with Echo otherwise.
Yep, yeah, I would say the same. The Sigma ban was not really an impact. I don't think he would have been played that much anyway.
That was a weird one.
Yeah, Lucio definitely would have been played if he was available, but the support line didn't seem to be crazy impacted by that, I guess. There weren't, like... I don't know if we would have seen rush comps if he was available anyway. It probably depended on map largely, and it probably wouldn't have happened very often, but we might have seen it a couple of times.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
so,
where do you want to start with the cup? I mean, I don't even know.
Well, I just took major notes on the actual grand finals. So if you have anything you want to talk about but leading up to the grand finals, we should start there.
I guess the only thing I'd want to talk about leading up to it would be that LA throughout the qualifiers and then throughout the tournament looked really good. They were the number one from their side, and they deserved it. They played like it. They were in the grand finals, obviously, and I really like. I guess I didn't realize how good they were until I watched this particular tournament, and their team works together really well and is fun to watch.
Very fun.
They were tearing it up, and I enjoyed that a lot. The other thing, I love seeing that Chengdu is back. They're back in another grand finals. They had some ups and downs during the tournament, but they looked really good. I love watching Leave play. He is a fucking madman, and I feel like a big part of this grand finals was kind of the 1v1 between Leave and Kevster throughout the tournament, which was it was really fun and exciting to watch. And they're both fantastic players, and I think that you could run this tournament or run this grand finals back, and you would have a totally different outcome, and it would still be just a blast to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was fun. I wrote down like LA Gladiators. They're kind of both these teams, I guess. They're like always a bridesmaid, never a bride kind of teams. It feels like.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see them. And last time for the Summer Showdown, I wrote it's not Dallas versus Shanghai, and this time it's not Dallas or Shanghai. Even better. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty neat.
I mean, Shanghai wasn't even in the actual tournament at the end, I don't think. And Dallas was, but Dallas got kicked out pretty quickly. So, totally different flavor. And both teams, I think, are like they're contenders. I'm excited to see what happens in the actual playoffs this year.
For sure.
All right, should we dive into the actual grand finals?
Yeah, let's do it. Map 1, Oasis. Yeah, things kicked off good. The team comps were interesting. They were fairly similar. I mean, their tank lines were the same. Orisa and Diva, both teams were playing. I feel like we saw a lot of Orisa in general on certain maps. For sure.
Diva, just constant. You see Diva every single game, basically.
Yep.
Both teams running Baptiste on support. And then you had some differences in the remaining champs. So Chengdu ran Pharah and Mercy combo along with Hanzo. So Leave was playing Hanzo. And you had Kevster on Tracer, of course. He played Tracer basically the entire time. Actually, it might have been the entire time. I don't know if he played... he played Pharah in a few of the earlier matches, but I don't know if he did in the grand finals at all.
There were a couple, like, he would have on a map, he would switch out something just, like, super, super briefly.
Yeah.
Occasionally. But, yeah, he was on Tracer 95% of the time.
Just running it, yeah. And then Birdring was playing Hanzo at the beginning, and they had a Zenyatta as their other support. So, some interesting differences. And it felt pretty back and forth on that very first map. At the beginning, Leave gets a pick on Shu playing Baptiste. Jinmu takes Birdring down, and Chengdu takes it. But it wasn't like a sure thing for them. It went back and forth a little bit, and Chengdu eventually takes it.
Just in 2, right?
Yes, Chengdu takes it in 2. They kind of eventually went a little bit more dive focused, and Kevster tries to put the team on his back and tries to carry it through, and he gets some great kills, but it's just not quite enough. Chengdu looks like the better team coming out of map 1, in my opinion.
Yes. Yep, definitely. I wrote down, there was definitely back and forth, I agree, but it felt like Chengdu just always had the upper hand in the first map. I took special note of Jinmu on map 1, because he played Genji, Pharah, and Sombra just on the first map, and looked good on all of them. He just is super versatile, and they seemed pretty in control. And I took a note later on that Chengdu look like they had the upper hand on this control map, and that comes into play later when we see another control map.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so Chengdu goes up 1-0.
Yep. Yeah, it looks good for Chengdu to start. And I have a note here, and I'm very curious to hear your take on this. So I want to talk about the stupid beach filler content. Did you watch any of this? That the
So during I watched most of this tournament while walking on the treadmill, and so I do this anyway on all of these. They have their 3-minute break in between maps, and I just scrub forward through it. And so if you don't know what Matt is talking about, what they have is just just a blank screen with the image of Tracer or something. It's we'll be back in 3 minutes. They play some Overwatch music. Cool, whatever. And during this, they had 2 of the casters on green screen with beach-themed backdrops on their green screen, and they were reacting to it. So they would have waves behind them, and they would pretend they're surfing and putting on hats and stuff. My take is that it doesn't matter to me because I just fast forward through it all anyway.
Same for the most part. There was one, I think it was actually the grand finals, because these were played during all the matches. I think it was actually during part of the grand finals. I was watching live at some point, and Veronica was with me, and I was just what the fuck is this? What are they doing? I don't know how they think this is somehow better than the 3 minutes of normal music that they play and just screen that they show me. And I guess, honestly, like you're saying, it doesn't make a difference. I wouldn't watch it either way. I would skip through it. I wonder how much they paid these guys to do this. It looked unpleasant to do. I thought it was ridiculous, and I hated it.
Yeah, I can't imagine them not feeling very cringy about having to do it. Yeah. In my opinion, I get the impulse to have something entertaining in those 3 minutes, especially when you're thinking about the people watching live. You want to keep them invested. To me, that's when you need a replay reel of the previous map or a little bit of commentary, because it's to me the weird thing is they have a halftime at some point in a long series, a 7-game series, and they go to the analyst desk for what seems like an eternity. Why not just have a little bit of commentary, give me 5 minutes in between each map or whatever, and have the analyst desk, and then they're not trying to stretch out the material. They can actually just comment on the game that we just watched, and that could be more fun. Or, if you don't want to do that, just give me the blank screen and the music, and I'll go to the bathroom, refill my drink, get a snack, whatever it is I gotta do.
Yep. Yeah.
Tend to my larva,
Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous enough to take a note about it, so I wanted to talk about it.
They did at the Summer Showdown. They had one of those in between, and they had Zoe, one of the other analysts, snorkeling. Yeah. That was okay. I could get behind that one.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was much less obnoxious and cringy, like you said. It was she's literally laying on a beach or something and hanging out, and that's the extent of it. Okay,
it's like a screensaver.
Yeah. Okay, I can deal with that.
Yeah. Exactly. I like that you took note of that. Map 2, Anubis. Let me also take note of something that is not gameplay related and is more of a visual feast. I had a lot of fun. So you've got Kevster on LA and you've got Jinmu on Chengdu, and they're both Terminators. They're both they're so intense on screen. You've got Kevster, and they're also kind of opposites because you've got Jinmu, who just looks pissed off all the time. His head's slightly back, and he's just scowling at the screen.
Yeah, literally no emotion.
And then you've got Kevster, truly no emotion, head slightly forward and just expressionless the entire time. Barely moves at all. So that was fun to me. And then, the big note I had on Anubis was just watching Kevster's Tracer is just a treat. It's like watching a superhero or something.
Well, and so he popped off in large part because of Birdring Sombra. Birdring was getting hacks like crazy, and Chengdu got nothing on this map. They've been really bad at this map all year. I think their win rate going into it was 52%.
They attacked first.
And they got 88% of point A, and that was it. They didn't even cap point A.
And point A is kind of a gimme on this map.
Yeah, realistically, especially in Overwatch League, that should get taken at some point, and then point B is a clusterfuck. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, like I was watching it, and Birdring, it wasn't even EMPs. It was just Birdring was getting hacks in the fights that were capitalized on over and over and over again. And Chengdu, because of that, just could never get a good team fight going and could not cap that point. So, and then this is something that I watched in a couple of different maps. Nano boosted Muse, who's playing Winston, is what won the fight that won them point A, basically. They're going through the choke. They basically just build up Nano Boost over time, throw it on Muse. He actually gets EMP'd, I'm pretty sure, but it doesn't matter. He's in there, he's still nanoed, and he's just still like able to flop people around. He can't jump out, but he doesn't want to jump out. And he gets some kills. It's kind of snowballs from there. They take point A, they win the map. It's done.
Yeah. Yep. It was very straightforward after they completely stuffed them on their attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not much to say on that one. It was just a thorough ass beating.
It was a big departure from the first map for sure. Chengdu looked just not good. They were not in the competition there at all. Map 3 was pretty close for the most part. I think LA still looked better overall, but Chengdu did get to, had a chance to take the third point with no time left, which would have matched LA. So this is at Numbani, and LA attacked first in this case.
Yep. It was at this point that I was thinking just how cool this series was because of the damage squad on both teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got 4 just top-tier, exciting damage players, Jinmu and Leave versus Birdring and Kevster. It was a game that really felt decided by the damage core, which was just made for really exciting games.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. I literally had a note here. The difference in these maps was damage dealers. And you are right, like, I didn't really think of it in those terms, because I don't think I really registered Kevster as one of the top damage dealers until watching these games. But Birdring has a history of being fantastic. Jinmu, history of being fantastic. Watching Leave this year, he has been fantastic. So yeah, those 4 players were really what determined what was going to happen.
And it might be that I'm going a little overboard saying Kevster is top tier, because it's like, as we said, he just looks like a Tracer main, basically. But he is a god on her, so.
And she's been played in basically every meta this year, I would say. Like, she was banned for a period in one of the tournaments, I'm pretty sure. And obviously, you can't play her then, so he's kind of out of it there. But anytime she hasn't been banned, she has been an important part of team compositions.
There's also in this map a really good Ana mirror between Monk and Shu. It was cool seeing them square off against each other and get like simultaneous sleep darts on each other's teammates.
Yeah, Shu is an absolute animal. I don't think it was during the grand finals, but there was some crazy plays, some crazy sleep darts, some just crazy damage dealing that Shu did, and yeah, he did a fantastic job.
So LA continues to look pretty much in charge over the course of this one, and now they're up 2-1.
Yes, and so I mentioned the whole Muse Nano thing. They take that third point on this map from a Nano boosted Muse, again, kind of stuffing Chengdu in the spawn point at that very last point. Like, that's how they roll through the third point. And Chengdu, when they finally take point 2 on their attack, and they get close, but they don't have any big push like that. They get held back, and they cannot complete the map. So I think that nano boosted Winston is just a powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. So this brings us to map 4, Route 66. I remember this being close, and it feels like almost everything I remember about this map is eclipsed by one particular play where Skewed on Brigitte sees Leaves Tracer going in through a room towards the final point.
Yeah.
And holds up the shield so he can look around the wall, and perfectly times when Tracer comes up, shield bashes and kills her instantly. And when you watch it in the actual game, the camera's on Leave's tracer at the time, and it happens so fast. Like, Leave just dashes, and all of a sudden, bam, pop, dead. And Brigade is running over his corpse. It was really impressive.
It was a really close map, and Chengdu just couldn't finish it at the end. They were right at the end, very similar to Nimbani. And they didn't really C9, but they just could not get bodies on the cart during that last fight, really.
I was going to say, if you watch it, I remember watching it the first time and thinking, oh, they messed up, nobody stepped on the point, but they just got repelled away. They just couldn't get to it.
Yep.
Well, this is a thing that's going to become more of a theme as we go on. Do you think this is happening because of compositions, or do you think it's just outplays in the moment? I know you mentioned in Anubis you liked the Winston Nano, and you liked it in Numbani as well. Do they just not have the power in their composition to finish these pushes off?
I don't think it's a compositional thing, honestly. It seems like, so, we were talking about the damage dealers and those matchups being really important to these fights. I think that there's a lot of this is kind of like individual matchup type stuff, and who is playing better that day.
If you can get the picks, then you win the fight.
And one of the notes I took earlier in this during this match was that Gaga and Late Young, who have both been really good tanks to watch in general, I don't feel like they really played great during this tournament. Like, they played fine. There's nothing I can really point to that was like, this was bad, that was bad. But I feel like Muse and Space were the better tanks during these matchups. And whenever the damage dealers got those picks and made a little bit of room for their team, the rest of the team was able to fill that space and capitalize on it. So I don't. It's really hard to say. Like, the compositions were kind of changing all the time too. There was definitely a heavy focus on kind of dive characters in general. I would say, you had a lot of Sombra play, you had a lot of Wrecking Ball play or Winston play, a lot of Diva play. But it wasn't really played like a traditional dive where everybody goes on one target. There's still that deathmatchy feel to Overwatch right now, and I think that the teams with the better players who are getting those picks and then are able to capitalize on them are the ones who are winning.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can agree with that. So that puts LA to match point. They're up 3-1. Map 5, another control map, Ilios. They threw up a stat that both teams have been extremely good on control maps, like a very high win percentage on them. But in this series, at least, Chengdu just clearly has the upper hand on control.
Yeah.
Both this and map 1. It's like watching two different series, watching the control maps and watching the other maps.
Yeah, 100%. They looked fantastic on Ilios. They took him out, no problem. Just, they seemed comfortable playing this map.
Yeah. And by contrast, LA just kind of flailed around during this map, I felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very strange going from that 3-map win streak to this for LA.
Mm-hmm. I really didn't have any other notes on that one. It was like
Same.
Very straightforward. It was like, I would imagine seeing this map in a very boring series where one team is just clearly better than the other team.
Yeah.
The only thing that's interesting about it is like that's clearly not the case.
Yeah, it is kind of wild to see those different map, and maybe that is like, obviously that's an important part of Overwatch, right? Those map types do have very different play styles and different things you need to do in order to win. So,
yep. Now map 6, King's Row. This was some exciting times.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild one. I love King's Row in general. It's one of my favorite maps, I would say. It's a cool design, narrow corridors, high ceiling. There's a lot of opportunity for different champs and different play styles.
For sure. I'm trying to think what some of the cool stuff was. Birdring went apeshit as Hanzo early on.
Mm-hmm.
On the defense, he was going against Farah and Mercy and just got back-to-back headshots and killed them both with and I killed the Mercy with like a instant reaction shot, and the casters were going crazy about it. I was too.
Just flicks over to the right and boom, dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love watching Birdring on snipers. Even though I don't love snipers, I really like watching his. It's a different experience when you're watching the pros play them and you don't have to go against it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Chengdu has a hard time attacking in on point A, and eventually they break it with Jinmu on Genji, has a pretty nutty blade, and then after his blade is done, he gets nano boosted to kill the last few remaining scraps, and that turns the tide on their attack on point A.
Yeah. And then they were kind of able to roll through from there to point B, basically. Well, not quite, though, right? They roll through for a while. They kind of get stuffed towards the end of it. And there's some funky stuff that happens at the end of that. If I recall correctly, it's actually Anna on Chengdu who kind of finishes that fight at the next point for them.
Yeah. You've got, I don't know if this is the same play that I'm thinking of. Are you thinking of with a grenade kill?
There's a nade that kills 2, and then a sleep on Mercy, if I remember right. That kind of that's what snowballs that final push in and takes that second point.
Yeah, there was a great play where there's a Diva bomb that lands onto the enemy team, but Baptiste has his immortality field. So it blows up the immortality field, and with the new way Baptiste works, you have very low health if you get saved by the immortality field. And then Anna throws down a grenade on top of that pool of champs and gets a triple kill just with their grenade because they're all at like 1 HP.
Yeah, and then I think Sleep's Mercy up top and kind of negates any possibility of a res in that moment of anybody. And they're able to finish the other teammates for LA and push to that point.
And then on LA's attack, it comes right down to the end. They don't have much time either. They get stalled for a long time on the initial 2 points. And it looks like for a minute like they're still going to do it. Kevster had my favorite play, I think, of the entire series.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
Lurking, on point 3, he's lurking in a little metal corridor off to the left going into the final push. And he's just waiting there. He pokes his head out and sees Anna like all the way across the map. And like before I can even process what's happening, he triple dashes, sticks her, recalls back, and she's dead. Mm-hmm. And it's like the amount of time between he sees Anna and he makes that play and she's dead is like less than a second easily. Yep. It was horrifying. I would hate to be that
yeah, it was pretty bonkers. Anna's just hiding behind a crate back there, basically shooting healing into her team, and like you said, a half second later, pulse bomb exploded, dead.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing. But they're ultimately not able to capitalize that, and Chengdu holds on and pushes to the deciding sudden death match point.
Which was kind of a letdown when it comes down to it.
It was, yeah. It's a super cool series, but yeah.
Chengdu just didn't seem to, for whatever reason, and this was a King of the Hill style map, right? Which we would have expected them to be better at.
No, this was Havana.
Oh, shoot. You're right. My apologies.
Yeah, it was Havana for the last one. And the reason that it was kind of disappointing is that Chengdu just couldn't decide what comp they wanted to run. I wrote down that they made the opposite mistake of what I tend to do. I tend to not switch off when I should. And they were just switching constantly, like choosing champs that didn't make sense in a situation, and then they had to switch and lose all that ult equity. And so they just lost because they weren't building up ults at the rate that they should have been, and they just shot themselves in the foot.
If I remember correctly, and God, I apologize if I don't, but there was some funky stuff going on here too, where Leave and Jinmu were playing opposite champs of kind of what they had played earlier in the day. So like Jinmu was the kind of Sombra focus a lot of the time, but I think Leave played some Sombra during this, and I think Jinmu played some Hanzo during this, which is really what Leave had been playing earlier. And so there was some weird, like you're saying, some funky stuff going on there, some funky decision making on trying to adjust to LA, and it just really wasn't successful. It was really frustrating to watch them because they made it through point A, right? They make it into the rum warehouse basically, and they're pushing that cart, and they have some good plays, but they're not able to put it all together and get everybody on the cart and finish pushing it through. Like, it seemed like they could, and they just could not get it all together.
Yeah. And then you had, I believe, LA started out with double snipers on their defense. They had Widowmaker and Hanzo, and actually made that work for a while. Like, both snipers like simultaneously headshot the enemy support line, I believe, which was really impressive. And then there was one last play that I really enjoyed. You mentioned at the top of our recap here that Leave is a beast. At the very end, when they're making like their final stand, he switches to 76, and he, in cleaning up, he's like running across the bridge, has the wherewithal to realize there are people off to his left, looks over, guns down somebody, and then instantly rockets and kills the other person. And it's like just so casual, just over the bridge, click, click, boom, 2 people are dead. He keeps running forward. But it just wasn't enough. They had switched too often and couldn't really decide what they wanted to do.
It was frustrating.
So like you said, yeah, kind of lackluster at the end.
Frustrating because I think Chengdu like is a really good team and has that potential to win one of these tournaments, and they have not been able to put it all together all at once and do it. And I love Chengdu because I remember watching them over the past few years, and they were a joke, they were a meme for so long. They just did wacky stuff, and nobody knew what they were doing. And they've got some really good players. They've put some cool stuff together. They've won obviously some important games, and I would love to see them in the playoffs do something big.
For sure. By the same token, I was very happy to see LA win.
Yeah, and that's exactly like we said earlier. Not having Dallas or Shanghai in here, I guess it's a treat either way.
Yeah. And like you said, LA is is also a fun team to watch. It seems like they have a lot of fun. There was a funny moment, I forget what map it was. I think it was New Bonnie, where Kevster starts. They did the classic thing with like Symmetra. You know, you start with Symmetra, put up a teleporter, your team teleports through, and then you switch.
Oh yeah.
He trolled. He put the teleporter off the edge, and only one. I think
I think it was Shu. Yeah.
Shu walked through it and fell off the edge, and so he had to. Then Jinmu had to wait for him to come back, replace the teleporter, and then he switched back. But they're all, you can see them all laughing about it. And here you are in the middle of the grand finals. What is $100,000 on the line? Just being goofballs.
It's nice to see him have fun, right? Nice to see him still enjoying playing the game.
Yeah, definitely. Good tournament. Yeah, I was a little disappointed in the final map, but getting a 7-game series in the grand finals, I mean, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Especially when it looked like LA was just going to roll them for a while.
Yeah, I mean, both this and then the Summer Showdown, tournament final, grand finals were really good. There's been some really good Overwatch League this year to watch. I'm excited. I hope the playoffs are the same. It's coming up soon, actually. It's September 16th is when it starts, so a couple weeks still.
Good. I've got time to edit this. Oh, I did have one last note, in particular about Map 7, but it kind of applies to the whole Grand Finals and just the meta in general. I really liked how snipers played in this tournament, because it seemed like they had to pick their spots very carefully, and they constantly had to be on the move. You couldn't set up a sniper nest, it didn't seem like. It was just constantly Widows having to relocate, find a little window, take a few shots, move somewhere else. Hanzo's climbing walls, running away. I think that if you're going to have snipers in a game like Overwatch, and you and I have talked, it's a good thing for the game ultimately. Mm-hmm. I think this is how they should play optimally, because that makes it still feel Overwatchy and not like you're playing some weird other game.
I think it speaks to the balance of the game right now, right? It's not... When the game was double shield meta and it was just shields and snipers behind shields and kind of stationary, it wasn't as fun. I think that the game is in a good state, and that's why that is the case. You know, you can still play those snipers, but you have to be good and smart in order to do it. You can't just be a cucumber.
Good at clicking heads.
Yeah. You can't just be sitting back there not moving and doing your thing. So, I would agree with that.
Well, we will look forward to the actual playoffs and grand finals. I feel like it's weird. They have all these cheeky names for all these little tournaments, the May Melee, the June Joust, and then the ultimate playoffs are just like the playoffs, I guess.
I mean, I would, I would prefer if we just changed the goofy names to something more, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, finals, or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then we could simultaneously dispense with the little shows of green screen beach tomfoolery. Yeah,
that'd be nice. I mean, hire us, Blizzard. But don't. We don't like you. You're a shitty company.
That's a different episode.
Definitely.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. As always, if you want to tweet at me in particular, I'm at Wolfmere on Twitter. You can use the hashtag #TheIntangibles.
And I'm Matt, and I don't have any social media, so reach out to Kenny if you want to talk to me.
All right, thanks everybody for listening. I'm Kenny.
I'm Matt, and I love you.
And we're the Intangibles.